Today's case is one of the most atrocious cases I have ever researched. The amount of times this child was failed by every single person in his life is unbelievable. Hearing the details of this case and seeing how it was handled is so far beyond comprehension, I almost refuse to believe it's real, but it's very real and it's sickening. But before we get into a case that is going to stress you out, I want to talk about one thing that I like to do to relax and busy my mind, and that is with Solitaire Grand Harvest, the #1 solitaire game in the world. Solitaire Grand Harvest takes the popular card game and combines it with an adventurous farming theme and riveting game excitement. It's an adorable combination of additional minigames, missions, and challenges which create an engaging gaming experience. What makes the game so unique right now is that Solitaire Grand Harvest has had a full Smurf makeover. That's right, Smurfs have joined the game to bring some playful chaos to the charming farmland. They bring with them daily surprises, themed features, and special missions. I absolutely love playing solitaire while embarking on a fun farming adventure with all my favorite Smurfs. Another one of my favorite things about this game is that it's relaxing yet rewarding. It's a great way to unwind after a long day or keep yourself busy while waiting at the doctor's office or at the airport, all while challenging yourself and keeping your brain engaged. The game is full of lovable characters like Sunny the Squirrel, the Greedy Smurf, plus you get your own pet Smurf to raise. It's genuinely the perfect mix of chill, cute, and fun. So, if you want a new way to play while keeping yourself engaged and relaxed, download Solitaire Grand Harvest using my link down below. Once again, make sure you follow the link in the description box below and download Solitaire Grand Harvest today. Thank you again so much to Solitaire Grand Harvest for partnering with me on today's video. And with that being said, let's get into the details of this case. Dennis Vaughan Jr. was born on June 11, 2014 to Danielle and Dennis Vaughan Sr. in Laconia, New Hampshire. To say that Dennis's life was rough from the start would be an understatement. So to give some background about his parents, back in 2004, then 15-year-old Danielle was left in the care of her mother's friend, then 48-year-old Dennis Vaughan, after her mother, Sherry Connor, decided to move and I guess be on her own in Florida. Shortly after moving in with this middle-aged man, he and Danielle became romantically involved. I use air quotes because given that Danielle was just 15, there was no way she could have consented to being in a relationship with a 50-year-old man. He absolutely groomed her and she fell victim to it because, again, she was a 15-year-old teenager who was just left behind by her own mother. I can't even imagine how lonely and desperate she felt, and now that she was getting attention from this older man, it probably felt good to finally be loved by someone. Truly, I feel so terrible for little Danielle, who was just put into an impossible situation by the woman that was supposed to protect her, but instead just left her high and dry. Either way, after the two became sexually involved by 2007, then 17-year-old Danielle had her first child with Dennis. From there, they went on to have 3 more children in 2009, 2010, and finally, by June 11, 2014, little Dennis Vaughan Jr. was born. Danielle later recalls that from the moment she saw Dennis, she called him Boo, which grew to be a loving nickname that stuck all throughout his short life. Dennis was described by his mother as an incredible smart boy. He was quiet and observant, the kind of child who could entertain himself and was happy being by himself. He loved the movie Cars and was known to watch Barney DVDs over and over again until he could sing along to each and every song. Despite his challenging life, he could always find ways to put a smile on his face. But soon after each of her children were born, according to Danielle, Dennis Sr. started to become increasingly violent and abusive towards both her and the children. This was something that Danielle had eventually grown accustomed to, as she recalled her mother always having episodes of erratic and violent outbursts all throughout her life. So sadly, She stuck around with Dennis, feeling that this is just what life had to offer. During that time, both Dennis Sr. and Danielle began using drugs, which led to Dennis being arrested multiple times, until finally, by February of 2016, police raided the family home and found their stashes of drugs, which included heroin, which I believe was Danielle's drug of choice. At that time, Dennis Sr. was arrested once again, and now Danielle lost custody of all 4 of her children. This whole thing was a huge wake-up call for Danielle. She loved her children and wanted to work on herself to eventually get them back. She was determined to maintain her parental rights so she could at least visit her kids while she took the steps to get off drugs and get herself back together. Now, initially, the children were all placed into a foster home where Danielle was allowed to visit. But there seemed to be a lot of tension and disagreement between Danielle and the foster parents, so the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services, or DCYF, started to evaluate Danielle's mother, or the children's grandmother, Sherry Connor, as a potential guardian for the children. Anytime a child is removed from their home, it is the goal of DCYF to try and get them placed with a biological family member. That's usually what's best for them, since it's typically someone the children know and are comfortable with. At first, DCYF found that Sherry was unfit to take in the children. They found that she often associated with drug users. She regularly abused alcohol and was known to scare the children. According to Danielle, she continuously abused her and even once sexually abused one of the children while she was drunk. She was not approved to care for the kids. However, in June of 2017, as that determination was made, the family court division found that the children's foster parents were interfering with Danielle's contact with her children. It seems like she was probably withholding the children from Danielle or not allowing her to visit as often as she was supposed to. I'm not 100% sure. Those details aren't readily available, but it seemed that whatever the foster parent did was bad enough that the court encouraged DCYF to place the 4 children with their grandmother, Sherry. So upon the recommendation, DCYF decided to place 3-year-old little Dennis Jr. along with his 3 siblings aged between 6 and 9 years old into the care of Sherry Connor, despite the fact that they literally found her unfit to care for them just days prior. Of course, this decision made Danielle concerned for the well-being of her children. She knew how she grew up. Sherry was abusive, angry, and violent. Danielle knew that her children were in danger, but there really wasn't much she could do. All she could do was hope that Sherry would love and care for the kids. She wanted so badly to make herself believe that they would all be okay. But that hope quickly vanished only a few months into the arrangement. The first incident happened less than 2 weeks after the kids were placed with Sherry. By July 10th, 2017, Sherry marched into the DCYF office with 3 of the children by her side and met with an agent. She complained that she wasn't getting any money for the children and that DCYF dropped them off with her with no warning. According to the agent, she was extremely hostile. She was gritting her teeth, waving her arms around. She banged on the hallway railing before yelling that DCYF effed up her paperwork. Already, we can tell that she is quick to anger and temper tantrums. DCYF made note of this, but they didn't do anything about it, which to me is very concerning because if someone is willing to act this way in public to the very people that are making determinations on whether or not the children will stay with you, that is a massive red flag for how they're acting behind closed doors. Then, anytime Danielle got to visit her children, she started noticing that they would have bruises in strange and concerning places, such as on their ears or wrists. Those are telltale spots for abuse. Once, one of the children was even hospitalized for a concussion. But whenever Danielle would ask her mom about the bruises and injuries, she would always have an explanation. And again, this is Danielle's mother we're talking about. Even though she did abuse her throughout her life, she still wanted to trust her. And I know that can be really hard for so many of us to understand, but we need to realize that Danielle was constantly undergoing abuse and manipulation from all the people in her life that were supposed to love her. For a while, it's all she knew. So I can see how she just wanted to believe that her children were okay so bad that she allowed herself to accept what her mother was telling her, even if it was against her better judgment. As time continued to pass, though, Danielle just continued noticing more injuries and further bruising. During one visit, she noticed finger-shaped bruising around one of the children's chins. Danielle could tell that it was from Sherry grabbing them by the chin aggressively. It's the same thing that Sherry would do to her. She would squeeze the chin and then lift up the head so forcefully that they'd almost be lifted off the ground. Seeing this finally prompted Danielle to make a call to DCYF to report possible abuse. This was the first of many calls that DCYF would receive over the 2 years the children spent with Sherry. By August of that same year, law enforcement received a call from a concerned witness at a local campground who reported seeing Sherry screaming at 3-year-old Dennis, saying, "Grab him by the neck and face, hit his face, throw a cup of liquid in his face, and grab his arm and drag him to the tent." The witness then heard screams coming from the tent and became concerned that a child needed medical attention. The law enforcement officer who responded to the scene and spoke with the witness then called DCYF to report the claim. But months after this report was made, DCYF deemed the report unfounded. Then, by Christmas of that year, Danielle went to Sherry's house in Laconia, New Hampshire to celebrate the holiday with her and the kids. But when she got there, she discovered that the children were living in absolutely deplorable conditions. First of all 4 children appeared small and skinny for their ages. It seemed obvious to Danielle that they were not eating enough. Then the home itself was vile. There were dog and human feces scattered across the floors. The kitchen cabinets and refrigerator were all locked so that none of the children could get food or drinks for themselves. Danielle reported that the kids told her when they got too thirsty, they resorted to drinking out of the toilet. But when they did that, they got in trouble. So now they had to use a 5-gallon bucket in the living room to poop and pee. After this horrifying visit to Sherry's disgusting home, Danielle said that she called DCYF probably almost every day to urge them to investigate. But each and every time someone assured her they would look into it, they ultimately found the allegations unfounded and closed the case. By around 11 p.m. on January 5th, 2018, a neighbor called police to report that Sherry was screaming and beating on her kids in her apartment. When an officer responded to the call, Sherry told them that she was making one of her kids run up and down the stairs 10 times as punishment for urinating on the wall. The officer spoke with the child, who confirmed that account. After that, the officer told Sherry that her neighbor made a noise complaint and that she needs to be mindful of her neighbors. No further action was taken. Now, despite all of the repeated calls to DCYF and law enforcement, by January of 2018, DCYF filed with the courts to make Sherry the guardian of the 4 children, which was granted by March of that year. Now that Sherry was their guardian, she gained the ability to control, in her full discretion, Danielle's access to those kids. Danielle did get to see her kids on occasion after that, but Sherry got to decide when and where. The following month, in April of 2018, nurses from the Elliott Hospital called DCYF to report that one of the children under Sherry's care was covered in unexplainable bruises. She took over 90 photos of the bruises on this child's body and face. He had small lacerations on his lips, bruises on his wrists consistent with handcuffs, bruises on his back and abdomen, and arms and shoulders. Upon examination, hospital staff deemed the bruises non-accidental and determined that they were most likely from abuse. Even though all of this information was relayed to the social worker via a phone call, it was determined that this boy was safe to go back home with Sherry. The social worker never actually visited the hospital or interviewed Sherry or the boy. He said that he would follow up with her the following day. However, that didn't happen. DCYF was then called an additional 2 times in the days following by teachers of the same child who also noticed the bruises. Then, later in the same month, another teacher called DCYF to report that one of the other Vaughan children also had bruises all over his face and body. A few days later, a social worker from DCYF followed up and did do a home visit where he saw the child and saw the bruises all over his face. When he asked the child what caused the bruises, with Sherry right there, by the way, he said that he slipped and fell while playing games. He also asked Sherry if she abused the kids, and she said no. So apparently, a terrified and abused child making up a story about the bruises in front of his abuser and the abuser saying that they don't hit their kids is enough for a trained social worker to close the case. After this home visit, the reports of abuse were deemed unfounded. By August of that year, an anonymous caller reported that Sherry was changing her methods of abuse to avoid leaving more bruises on the kids. She started putting the children in ice baths and was suffocating them with pillows to stop them from crying. The caller also reported other forms of abuse she was inflicting on the children. She was hitting and kicking them, but only in places that were covered by clothing. She made them sleep in a locked basement with no lights, no toilet, and no comfort items like blankets or pillows. She was handcuffing them and taping them up to confine them. This reporter said that Sherry was heard screaming at the kids, calling them dirty dogs, and telling Dennis that she hates him the most. She would leave 4-year-old Dennis in his high chair all day and night without letting him out. He was also fed rotten and spoiled food. As a response to this call, an agent from DCYF visited the home and interviewed Sherry. He did not interview any of the children at that time. When entering the home, the agent noted a strong smell of urine. When telling Sherry about the anonymous caller, she said that she assumed the caller was her sister, who was lying and misunderstanding her treatment of the kids. She admitted to making the kids run up and down the stairs as punishment, but denied any physical abuse. The worker took a quick look at the kids and saw no visible bruises. Of course, no bruises means that they're not being abused, even though the caller literally reported that Sherry was changing up her means of abuse to avoid bruising the children. Despite this, because they found no bruises and, because Sherry told them that she wasn't abusing the kids, the children were marked as safe and the report was unfounded. At this point, from the time that the kids were placed with Sherry, so around mid-2017, all throughout the entire year of 2018, DCYF received 11 credible reports of child abuse within Sherry's home. They saw the bruises. They spoke to people who literally heard Sherry telling the kids that she hates them and screaming at them. She admitted to physically punishing the children, yet none of the reports were taken seriously. Throughout the month of January, now going into 2019, an additional 4 calls were made to DCYF. Teachers noticed that the kids were showing up to school smelling like weed. They were still covered in bruises. A licensed therapist from the school also called, saying that the children reported falling into a fire and burning their hand, and that Dennis had fallen down the stairs and was shaking after, yet neither time did Sherry take the kids for medical attention. Dennis and his brother reported that they had to drink out of the toilet once again because they were not being given food or water. An agent followed up with Sherry once again, who had an explanation for everything. She denied the claims of the children being injured. When it came to the toilet water, she said that the children weren't allowed to drink after 6 p.m. because they wet their beds. Otherwise, they had free access to food and water. She denied making the kids use a bucket to go to the bathroom, instead claiming that it was just a potty training chair for Dennis. Any bruises seen on the kids, Sherry said, were from the kids just roughhousing. I want to note that this was the 16th call made to DCYF within the span of 2 years. And I want to highlight that it's not like it was the same person that was calling over and over and over again, maybe trying to harass Sherry, maybe trying to get her in trouble for no reason. It's not like it was Danielle each and every time just trying to get her kids back. These calls were made from all sorts of different people, mandated reporters who saw the abuse, people who were just concerned citizens, and even law enforcement officers. All these different people were calling DCYF and nothing was ever done. After this other report was made, DCYF workers did finally interview the children at the school away from Sherry, because every time prior they either didn't interview the kids at all or they did so with Sherry standing right there. When the worker did interview the kids at school, though, they barely answered the questions. They were likely too afraid to talk. It's almost as if any time they told an adult about the abuse, nothing was done. It was almost like they were being punished for telling anyone what was going on. It was almost like they knew no matter what they said, no matter how many times they asked for help, nothing would make it stop. And after conducting these interviews, as you could expect, the DCYF worker deemed that the children were safe. By June, Danielle also called DCYF again to report that Sherry wasn't letting her see the children and that she was concerned that they were being abused. She had apparently received an accidental voicemail left by Sherry, who appeared to have butt dialed her. In the voicemail, she heard the sound of Sherry slapping her 8-year-old child, the child screaming and Sherry screaming back. Sherry apparently yelled to the child, "I hate you, I can't wait to get rid of you, effing dirty dog, and little effing bitch." In response, DCYF said that they would investigate her claim. As DCYF was investigating that report, by July of 2019, reports came in from campers at the Epsom campground reporting that Sherry took the same 8-year-old child to the campground, taped him to a chair, and then left him there overnight. When an agent came to collect the child, he reported that Sherry taped into the chair and left him there, and then beat another sibling with a belt and left bruises all over his brother Dennis's body from also beating him. Finally, DCYF decided to step in and removed the 8-year-old from his grandmother's care and placed him back with his mother. Except they only took the 8-year-old and none of the other children, which doesn't make any sense. This child literally told the officer that Sherry was also abusing the other children. He literally said that there were bruises from her beating the other children. And now it was very clear the lengths that Sherry was willing to go to. She literally taped a child to a chair and then left him there overnight. So why on earth did they think that it was enough to remove this one child, but none of the others? As a result of this child being removed from her care and being placed back with Danielle, Sherry stopped allowing Danielle from seeing all of the other children altogether. Then, as this child was back with his mother, he clued her into a lot of the abuse Sherry put him and his siblings through. He told her that he and the others were being forced to sleep outside several nights during the cold winter months. He said that Sherry would sometimes touch his private parts and was putting jalapeno sauce on his private parts as punishment, that he was frequently tied up and tied to chairs in the home. After he told Danielle about this abuse, she contacted an agent once again, as well as the court, to petition to terminate Sherry's guardianship. Their first hearing took place in August of 2019, and the court announced that they did intend to begin a transition of the children from Sherry's care to Danielle. However, they stated that DCYF needed to continue their investigation into any open reports and needed to assert their position on the matter. After this, another hearing was rescheduled for October of that year. But just 6 days before this hearing was set, another call was made to DCYF, this time by Sherry herself. She reported that one of the children made concerning statements regarding treatment she received from Danielle. Sherry said that Danielle was abusing the children anytime she got to see them, so that's why she was no longer allowing Danielle around them. As a result, at the October hearing, the court said that they were originally prepared to hand custody back over to Danielle, but in light of these new accusations, they needed to investigate further. Because one report to DCYF by Sherry, days before the court would decide if the children are taken away from her, is enough to make DCYF concerned. But the 20 reports made about Sherry abusing the children, those didn't really mean anything. After this hearing, there was more back and forth between Sherry, Danielle, the courts, and DCYF. Danielle called multiple more times to beg DCYF to listen. She asked them repeatedly to check on the welfare of the kids. In addition to that, over the months that followed, teachers at Dennis's school also called DCYF to continue to report bruises and abrasions found on his face and body. Yet still, nothing was being done by DCYF. The case stayed in limbo, and while Danielle was prepared and hopeful that she would soon be reunited with her children, all that hope would quickly be lost. Because by around 8 a.m. on December 24th, 2019, Christmas Eve, 911 received a call to report that 5-year-old Dennis Boo Vaughan was dead. Sherry Connor was on the other end, telling the operator that he was found unconscious and not breathing. She claimed that he was sick in the hours before he was found unresponsive, so he must have declined so badly that he died from his illness. When first responders arrived, they found Dennis lying on the floor in the living room wearing only a diaper. Sherry said that she originally found him in his room, so she carried him downstairs and laid him on the floor. By that point, he was unconscious, not breathing, and had no pulse. Right away, paramedics could see bruising on Dennis's face and chin. Immediately, they loaded him into an ambulance and rushed him to the hospital, where he was examined further by doctors and nurses. Hospital staff reported that he was pale, cold to the touch, and his extremities were already stiff. They noted additional bruises all over his body, face, arms, and back. By that point, 5-year-old little Dennis Vaughan was pronounced dead. There was nothing further they could do to bring him back. Finally, after Dennis was found dead, both of the other children were removed from the home. All it took was 26 reports to DCYF and a dead and bruised child for them to take action. From there, investigators named Sherry as their main person of interest and started their investigation into what happened. At that time, Dennis's little body was sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. There, it was found that Dennis had suffered from over 60 bruises and contusions, 9 of which were on his head. It was noted that many of his injuries appeared to be fresh, meaning that they occurred within the hours before his death. As a result of his extensive and severe injuries, Dennis's cause of death was determined to be the result of blunt force trauma, aka he was beaten to death. His cause of death was ruled a homicide. After Dennis's death, Sherry was also taken into the station for an interview with police. According to her, the interview only lasted 1 hour before she decided she was done talking to investigators permanently. In that interview, Sherry refused to really give up much information about how Dennis may have died. All she really said was that he was sick and had a problem with drinking excessive water. He drank so much water that he was trying to drink out of the dog bowls, out of the toilets, and would soak his pajamas in water so that he could suck the water out when he went to bed. She said that he had problems with being dehydrated despite all the water he was drinking, so she believed that something had to be wrong with him. I guess she took him to the doctor at some point for this issue, but it was never resolved, and even though the issue was ongoing, she didn't really do much about it. She said that in the hours before Dennis's death, he was dehydrated and even started hallucinating, but I guess she didn't think that it was enough to actually take him to the doctor. She didn't do anything about it. When police asked about any other symptoms he might have had, she didn't really respond. She pondered if maybe there was mold growing in her home, and that's what led to his death. She also denied knowing anything about any of the bruises he had. She obviously denied abusing him at any time, saying that she didn't even realize that DCYF was investigating her. She said that she actually saw one of the paramedics smack Dennis's head on a wall as he was being carried out, as he was being transported to the ambulance. So that must be how Dennis ended up with those bruises on his face, head, body, arms, and legs from that paramedic carrying him after he was already dead. Near the end of the interview, Sherry became increasingly agitated with all the questions and started to feel like police were beginning to suspect her, which they were. She started shouting, saying that they and DCYF were all ruining Christmas for her and the children, as if it wasn't already ruined by their 5-year-old little brother dying. Either way, after that interview with police, Sherry said that she refused to give them another second of her time. From there, she refused to speak with them any further. After this, the case went pretty much nowhere for the weeks, then months, then years that followed. According to police, the case was handed over to the Attorney General's office once the case was opened, but it seemed that no one was actively working on the case once it was handed over. Police were still doing interviews, and they had all the information they needed. They knew about the extensive history with DCYF, and the kids finally opened up to police, telling them about the years and years of torture and abuse they faced at Sherry's hands. And just to confirm, the stories we heard earlier about the beatings, them being denied food and water, them being forced to use a bucket as a toilet, being left to sleep outside, being verbally berated, all of that was true. So police knew for a fact that Sherry Connor beat and murdered her 5-year-old grandson. Yet still, for the years that followed, no charges were filed. It wasn't until 2024, 5 years after Dennis was found murdered in his home, when charges were finally brought against Sherry. For all those years, the case sat in the Attorney General's office untouched. But finally, by June of 2024, the case was handed to the Belknap County officials, who worked with the DA's office to finally bring charges against Sherry. Finally, the same month, now 61-year-old Sherry Connor was arrested and charged with numerous offenses, including reckless homicide, negligent homicide, several counts of first and second-degree assault relating to the other children, as well as witness tampering for scaring the children away from talking.
Every single time I saw them, they were covered in bruises. And they were unexplainable bruises.
In April of last year, Danielle Vaughan told News 9 Investigates her son, Dennis, who she always called Boo, was being abused while living with her mother, Sherry Connor, in Laconia. He was 5 years old on Christmas Eve in 2019 when investigators say he died of blunt force trauma to his head and neck. Danielle told us a Laconia police officer came to her job to tell her.
I'm like, no, is there something wrong with my kids? And I started crying. He's like, please, just come with me for a minute.
On Friday, Connor was arrested on charges of manslaughter, first and second degree assault, and witness tampering. Danielle told News 9 Investigates DCYF removed all 4 of her children from her life in 2016 because of her struggles with drug addiction. They were put in a foster home, and the next year, Danielle says DCYF tried terminating her parental rights, but a judge overruled that and instead, with Danielle's consent, granted guardianship of all of her kids to Connor. Danielle alleges that's when she noticed the abuse starting.
Here these people are saying that you're not fit enough to take care of your kids, and we're going to take them from you, but we're going to protect them, and we're going to do what you should have done.
She then went in front of a grand jury. At the grand jury, we hear more details about what the prosecution believes happened on the night of Dennis's death. This information came from interviews with the children, as well as what the ME found in their autopsy report. The prosecution alleges that on the evening of December 23, 2019, Sherry saw that Dennis had a fever and was refusing to eat or drink. Instead of taking him to the doctor or, nursing him back to health, she decided to beat Dennis with a broom until the handle broke. She then stomped on him until he was unable to move. At that point, she covered him with a blanket and left him on the floor for 2 hours. Later that day, she saw that his fever was now at 104 degrees, which can be lethal if not treated. He then lost control of his bowel and bladder movements and started hallucinating. Instead of taking him to the hospital for treatment, she told him that the devil was coming to take him away. So she can't even claim that she didn't realize how bad he had gotten because she admitted to beating and taunting Dennis, telling him that he was about to die and she wasn't going to do anything about it.
That afternoon, the punishment moved into the kitchen area where the defendant had DV running in place. It was reported that while he was running in place, DV fell down. SV reports that the defendant got mad and began to hit and kick DV while he was on the ground. During the assault, the defendant grabbed a broom and began to strike DV in the head and neck with it until the broom broke. SV reported that after the broom broke, the defendant proceeded to stomp on DV. After the assault, the defendant told DV to get up, but he was unable to do so. And eventually, the defendant covered DV in a blanket and left him there for a couple of hours.
After hearing this horrifying information, Sherry was indicted on her charges. It's clear to everyone who heard the evidence in this case that Sherry Connor viciously abused and tortured all 4 of those children for years until one was taken away and the other died from his injuries. At that point, she was also denied bail. I want to mention that throughout all of these hearings, both sides have expressed confusion for why it took so long to bring charges against Sherry. No one really has any answers for that. The only real answer could be that no one really knew about the case, so there was not really any public pressure to bring charges or investigate the case further. But once the public started learning about little Dennis's death and started putting more pressure on the government to take action, they finally decided to bring charges because people care about this child. By that point, Sherry's trial for Dennis's death was scheduled for February, but then it was pushed back to May of this year. I was scrolling along the Justice for Dennis Facebook page, and his family members and other supporters spent over 100 days counting down the days until jury selection began. But of course, just as expected in a case as convoluted as this one, the trial was delayed once again until August of this year, further crushing the spirits of everyone who loved Dennis and was looking forward to justice finally being served. So as of right now, Sherry has been sitting in jail awaiting her trial, but she is finding any and all reasons to continuously delay this case from ever going in front of a judge and jury. I believe this time it was delayed because she switched defense lawyers, so they need extra time to review the case and create their arguments before the case goes to trial. So to me, I would not be surprised at all if by the time the next court date approaches, they ask for another extension to further delay the case. Of course, this whirlwind of a case has been absolutely devastating for Danielle and everybody else who loved and cared for Dennis. From the moment he was taken away, she tried to tell the courts how dangerous Sherry was, but nobody ever listened. Time after time, DCYF failed to lift a finger, even when they saw the bruises, even when they spoke with witnesses who heard screaming and smacking, even when they heard that voicemail of her smacking and swearing at the children, even when Danielle saw the conditions they were living in for herself, even when the children were telling adults, trusted adults, what was happening to them. Nobody did anything to help Dennis or the other children until it was too late. As of 2023, Dennis's mother, Danielle, has filed a lawsuit against DCYF and the agents that mishandled his and his siblings' case. She is looking for damages to compensate for all the years she spent trying to fight to get her children back, for all the years her children had to suffer, and now for the time that she and her children are spending mourning over a death that never should have been allowed to happen, all while seeing Sherry walk free for 5 years and now not seeing justice still, even though a court date has been scheduled, it's still being delayed over and over and over again. As far as I have seen, the lawsuit is still pending, and because of that, DCYF has not made a comment on the case. though I already know that they probably won't do much to make up for their inaction, seeing as how they allow these situations to happen over and over and over again. But as of right now, that's where the case sits. I know you are probably so angry over this case. I know I am. I know everyone in the family are. It's devastating and it feels hopeless. This never should have happened, yet we see time and time again how grossly DCYF mishandles cases like this. But still, it continues to happen. I am happy that Sherry is finally in jail for this, but that should have happened long before Dennis was ever found dead. So I guess if I want anyone to take anything from this video, if you are in a position to help a child who may be in danger, please do it. Please believe what you see in front of your eyes. If you see concerning bruises, report it. If you're getting countless reports of a child being abused, please don't just brush it off. If you are a worker for the state or in any position to help these children, please use these cases as an example of why it is so vital, so important that action is taken. I'm so sick of seeing children die because the abuser is believed over the 20 plus other people who saw the abuse. Please, 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 if you are in a position to help, I implore you to do so. Lives are at risk. But that is where I'm going to end today's video, and now I want to hear from you all. Why do you think DCYF messed up this case so badly? How did this abuse go on for so long without anyone stepping in? And do you think Sherry will go to trial as scheduled, or do you think it'll be pushed back? Let's discuss this and any other thoughts you have in the comments below. If you like this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn the notification bell to on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Also, don't forget to use the link down below to download Solitaire Grand Harvest today. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. All will be linked down below. And if you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out the Google form, which is also, surprisingly, listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time.